When I think of sensuality, I'm confronted with something that is a lot more than just doing things slowly, or being present, or being effeminate, or something like that. Sensuality, as I see it, is living itself. It is our consciousness. And over time, just as with most things really, I found that sensuality has a dual nature. There is sensation, but also perception. Reality, illusion, and everything that exists in between those two things is possible because of the interplay between sensuality and perception. Again, sensualism is living. But in modern society, sensualism's significance has diminished greatly. Due to that, we have forgotten how to live. Today, many people do not really care about themselves enough to think about who they are or what they are experiencing. Some people adhere to one aspect of sensuality over the other. Some choose sensation, preference for the body and for reality, and the other half chooses perception, resulting in mental and physical inertia and a retreat into a kind of narcissism. I think we need now more than ever to know what sensualism is and where it originates, and be inspired by that and learn from that. And maybe through some of the things that I'll talk about today, you'll end up sharing my fascination for sensualism. I mean, it's something that's perplexed artists and scientists alike to their delight. Now, generally speaking, the goal of sensuality is the achievement of some fine emotion or creating a work of art. But such things are not experienced just through feeling. It's equally about the idea that comes from that feeling. And we arrive at our ideas through our ability to perceive by being conscious. All day we have sensations and perceptions about those sensations. So the first question I ask myself is, what came first? Sensation or perception? Mind or matter? And while I'm kind of partial to this archaic concept that the mind is the antecedent of matter, I still settle into this chicken and egg problem. But I think Kant said it best in his critique of pure reason. A mind without concepts would have no capacity to think. Equally, a mind armed with concepts but no sensory data to which they could be applied would have nothing to think about. Without sensibility, no object would be given to us. Without understanding, no object would be thought. So we seem to be stuck in this endless loop of sensing and perceiving. If you've ever seen Inception, Cobb is telling another character about the dream world and how we dream, we create the world as we perceive it. And we're doing this simultaneously, efficiently, so efficiently we don't know it. No start, no end, right? I mean, the word aesthetic, even aesthetics, is defined as referring to the physical appearance of things, to the appreciation of beauty, but also the word aesthetic comes from a Greek word meaning to perceive. So we have the physical appearance, the visual appearance of things, the sensory world, so to speak, and the mind that perceives that world, all in one word. The dual nature of sensuality is revealed there, I think. And that dualism, that twofold world that I'm talking about can be very elegantly surmised in a symbol, an ancient symbol. And that symbol is a mirror. When it comes to the origin of sensuality, we can start as small, as fundamental, as something that materializes on a cellular level, and that is mirror neurons. These are neurons that fire in our brain when we do something like pick up a pencil or when we cry, but they also fire when we see someone else doing those things. And with the help of mirror neurons, we have developed empathy. We become socialized, regulated human beings. Mirror neurons have been argued to be more than just the source of empathy, but it's also it's a source of the theory of mind, the great leap in our evolution 40,000 years ago, self-consciousness. It's hypothesized that the mirror neurons are responsible for the very invention of the self. I have been very keenly interested in the concept of self, probably to a fault, for a long time now, and I make plenty of videos about it. And because of this, I've always been inclined towards portraiture. I've done various self-portraits in different mediums over the course of over 10 years or something. The primary medium has always been photography though, and I just posted a series of self-portraits on my Instagram recently, and I've had a few people ask me how I did them. And it just so happens that there's an excellent course on portrait photography that is provided by this video's sponsor, Skillshare. I personally use the Adobe Suite for my portraiture, and this course by Clara shows you how to use the advanced tools in Lightroom to make your photos, your portraits of yourself, look amazing. I always felt, I do it myself, right? So I always feel that people should have a good portrait taken of them in their lifetime, a professional looking portrait, but we don't always have the money for that. But with Skillshare, you can easily be taught the techniques of the photographer, of somebody who edits these photos, and produce images that look professional, but you will have done it all on your own. For those who are unfamiliar with Skillshare, it is the largest online learning community with thousands of classes led by creative professionals and hobbyists for creative professionals and hobbyists, and everyone who is in between those two. It's a society of inspired people hoping to encourage you to do something you love and learn about yourself along the way. There are categories like photography and film, which include the class that I recommended earlier, but there are also categories like personal development and productivity. If you want something more business-oriented, there's creative careers, marketing, and business. If you are creative in some sense, there is something for you on Skillshare, I promise. I'm always surprised by what I find. Now, when it comes to doing your own portrait, it should be your mirror, so to speak. Portraiture in art is meant to, through the medium, through stylization, express the subject, express you. How do you, as Camus would say, remove the barrier between appearing and being? I've found that whenever I'm fidgeting around in Lightroom, nuance, simplicity, those are your best friends. And Lightroom helps you accomplish that nuance with the preciseness of its tools, stuff like tone curve and masking. I think it's best to express yourself when it comes to editing in a whisper, not a shout. And every time I've noticed that whenever a portrait is finished, you will see that you come through center stage, not the editing. So if you're interested in doing a wicked self-portrait of yourself, or just interested in giving Skillshare a try, the first 500 people who use my link in the description, as well as the QR code provided, will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. If you guys end up doing the portraits, please send me yours on Instagram or wherever. I want to see them. I want to see what you guys can do. Now, the person who proposed that mirror neurons are responsible for the birth of the self was V.S. Ramachandran, a visionary neuroscientist who was famous for using mirrors in his experiments and therapeutic practice. Specifically, he's most famous for working with phantom limb patients. If you don't know what phantom limbs are, they are weird. It's let's say you have your arm amputated and you can still feel the arm there. And generally there is a lot of pain associated with it. Phantom limb patients often feel clenching, cramps, feel like their arm is frozen, their fingernails are digging into their palm. So Ramachandran's most notable experiment and treatment was called the mirror box. So a patient would take the real arm that they had left, and they would put it inside the mirror box, and in the mirror would be reflected the other hand. It's like a false limb. And when the patient saw this, miraculously, they stopped feeling pain in their phantom limb. As you can imagine, right here, the visual perception of the limb tricked the mind into thinking that the amputated limb had returned to the owner. Perception dominated sensation. But how? How is that possible? I'm gonna try and explain this in a way that isn't like neuroscience terminology. This took me, I will tell you, trying to explain this in a way that isn't annoying, took me like an hour. So I tried my best with this, okay? If you want to read the actual article about this whole experiment, go right ahead and let me know if I got anything wrong here. The mind and the body mirror one another, okay? Which creates what Ramachandran called dynamic body image. So basically, there are two copies of your limb. There's the physical limb, the real one, and its sensations and, the signals that it sends to the motor cortex and all that. And then there's the idea of the limb and what it should do, which our brain learns from the limb being there and like the visual of the limb, okay? And then this then reaffirms the sensation of the limb existing. Yeah, okay. Constantly, our brain is sensing and perceiving things and like reaffirming your existence all the time. It's just like this loop. So in the unhealthy patient with the phantom limb, that arm is gone, but the impression of that limb, the idea of what it is and what it should be doing are still there in the brain. And for many patients, this ends up in the limb being cramped. Like I said, nails digging into the palm, there's a lot of pain involved with that. However, whenever they enter the limb into the mirror box, the hand that they're inserting into it is just like straight. It's just relaxed, and it's not cramped. It's not doing the things that the phantom limb is doing. So the brain sees that, the mind sees that, and then the phantom limb unclenches. There's no more cramp, there's no more pain because it learns from what it sees. The brain learns from the mirrored image of the limb. But one of the craziest parts, there's a lot of crazy parts to this experiment, okay? I'd read more on it, but one of the craziest parts is how mirror neurons work in these patients. Whenever a patient saw another person's arm being stroked or touched, they also felt that sensation on their phantom limb, on a limb they don't have. So here you have this insane interplay between physicality, vision, perception, expectations that our brain develops over time of like how the body should look or how it should behave. All of these things are flexible. Perception can manipulate the physical world and vice versa. So even at the most basic level of sensuality, you can see that like our world is being created as we go. The creation of everything like starts from these two copies, these two selves, the one that's rooted in the mind and the one that's rooted in matter. The next thing that I want to talk to you about is kind of going to make you feel like you're going off the rails. Hold on tight, I guess. The mirror of sensuality is also the fundamental building block of the self in another area of study, and that is psychoanalysis. The symbol of the mirror is present in Sigmund Freud's theory of the uncanny, in Jung's shadows, in Otto Rank's double, in Lou Andrea Salome's narcissus. But my current favorite interpretation of the mirror comes from Julia Kristeva's Powers of Horror, an essay on abjection. Now, Kristeva, from what I remember, doesn't really talk about a mirror literally as a symbol the way that I'm going to, but I see the symbol of it in what she talks about. But let me explain to you what the abject is if you don't know. The abject represents a part of ourselves that we reject in order to substantiate our identity. It is this sublime repulsion, a corpse, excrement, the film on raw milk, and also the murderer, the leper, the criminal. Those are all abject. We say, I am not that thing, and therefore that reaffirms who we are. But instead of just fear and dread when coming into contact with those things, an experience with the abject results in the complete loss of all boundaries that define everything that we know. Let me read to you from that essay. Abjection preserves what existed in the archaism of pre-objectal relationship, in the immemorial violence with which a body becomes separated from another body in order to be. maintaining that night in which the outline of the signified thing vanishes and where only the imponderable affect is carried out. This immemorial violence that she's talking about, where a body is being separated from another body, she's talking about the individuation that takes place when an unconscious child is separated from the mother. It's like this whole metaphorical thing, but we're talking about a space. It was the space that we existed in before being, before consciousness. Let's keep it simple, okay? And the urge to deny that pain of separation from the mother, right, is so strong that arguably it created consciousness. But the abject's presence in our life is what gives us the ability to create art, to live a life of beauty, to live sensually. She explains it here. The various means of purifying the abject make up the history of religions and end up with that catharsis par excellence called art, both on the far and near side of religion. Seen from that standpoint, the artistic experience is rooted in the abject it utters, and by the same token, purifies it. Everything we have today is a result of abjection, I guess. But like with phantom limbs, perception, again, interferes with sensation. In Kristeva's investigation, the human body is filled with blood, bile, excrement, but we perceive the body as clean and pure, like it's sealed up, and the skin is this like barrier from the very filth that we are comprised of, right? The abomination of the body is our most intimate secret, and it is a metaphor for the abject, that which we consider to be outside of us but is actually inside, and we only perceive the body from the outside. That perception is so flimsy and frail and fragile that simply at the sight of what lies within, like vomit or excrement you see on the sidewalk, throws us into this like unconscious identity crisis. Our modes of categorization falter and all horror leaks in. But you might ask, like, Celine, okay, why? What does this have to do with mirrors? What does this have to do with sensuality? In that moment, when we face the abject, we realize that instead of being divided, we are one. We are the filth. We are the rotting carcass. We are the mirror image of those things. And if we are the mirror image of those things, then we are nothing at all. Unlike with phantom limbs, when the abject dominates us, sensation and perception are not just disrupted, okay? They do not exist anymore. So we're coming to this point where sensuality, sensation, perception as one just completely is annihilated. You inhabit a space where there are no relations whatsoever. The fusion is not two halves becoming a whole, okay, in the mirror. And the mirror shatters. Whenever Freud was talking about like the uncanny and like the doppelganger, you know, looking at something familiar, but also like dangerous and scary, that is like the point just before abjection. Abjection is what happens after, is like the complete dismantling of the self. So because that sounds pretty scary and like what good does that do us? Naturally, the rational mind rejects that fusion and says, no, I am not that thing. The rational mind tells us to define ourselves based off of what we are not. I am not the corpse. I am not the murderer. We do not see ourselves in those things. There is no reflection of ourselves in those things, right? To recognize oneself in the mirror, according to psychoanalysis, is the beginning of our conscious existence. But for Kristeva, the end of our being is also in that reflection. It seems that sensuality holds this singularity of being the beginning and the end all at once. It seems to have sprouted from this like non-place, and then it recedes back into that place. Kristeva said something really... Kristeva's work, by the way, is filled with like beautiful language and poetry, and there's she was describing at one point that non-place, that space of the mother, you know, before consciousness, and she was saying perhaps we were just vacillating between two poles of attraction, you know, like just beautifully written. But I guess in some way you could say that abjection is the complete expense of sensuality. And I want to, if you're still listening, I wanna read to you like the first couple of sentences of just the beginning of this book. There looms within abjection one of those violent, dark revolts of being, directed against a threat that seems to emanate from an exorbitant outside or inside, ejected beyond the scope of the possible, the tolerable, the thinkable. It lies there, quite close, but it cannot be assimilated. It beseeches, worries, and fascinates desire, which nevertheless does not let it be seduced. Apprehensive, desire turns aside, sickened, it rejects. That impetus, that spasm, that leap is drawn toward and elsewhere as tempting as it is condemned. Unflaggingly, like an inescapable boomerang, a vortex of summons and repulsion places one haunted by it literally beside himself. There's a lot of language like that. And if you have the nerve to read this book, like if you have the time and the mental stamina to read it, please read it. Just to end this video, I guess, my understanding is this. Despite the seduction of such a horror, through our evasions, we're able to dream. You know, we're able to live this silly life that we're living. We get to lie to ourselves, I guess, about what is clean and pure, what is filthy, what is not. And to be able to make those distinctions between what I am and what you are is also the choice to read Goethe or Byron. It's the choice of a Francis Bacon painting over a Rossetti. A world where perception is subjective. That's unstable, sure, but it simultaneously grants us our individualism. It tugs us away from the mother that seeks to devour us in her dispassionate embrace, I guess. It's just so goddamn tragic and poetic life, you know. So that's perhaps the origin, right, of sensuality. It's just sprouting from abjection, I guess. It's all very interesting. I hope you made it through this video. I hope this was interesting for you to listen to. But more importantly, I hope this made sense. I took quite a long time to write this because I feel like I have a schizophrenic mind. Like I just have a really hard time consolidating my ideas and outlining them and like making them, I don't know. Let me know if this made sense. Okay. Let me know in the comments. Yeah, if you liked this, if it made sense, share this video if you thought it was cool. Sorry, it's a little dark today. Like and subscribe as always, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.